This is not a Seinfeld podcast, though it is slowly becoming one.
Bam, 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 bam. I can't.
What's good? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I'm a grown man who's never read the Percy Jackson books before, but I'm reading them currently for the very first time to determine if this is a book series that we've all been sleeping on as a society. But I'm not on this quest alone. I am joined by a very good friend of mine, a wonderful human being, the same guest from last time. He's still here with me in the studio. It's Stephen Parra. Stephen, how's it going?
Oh, I'm doing great, Mike. You know, I'm rehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
I did some jumping jacks.
Yes.
The blood is flowing. I'm ready to come back and tackle this chapter.
Yes, if you are listening at home and you're thinking, wow, it really sounds like Stephen's blood is flowing better in this episode. Well, that's because he did jumping jacks and we're ready to roll. So we are here to continue our coverage of the 7th chapter of The Sea of Monsters, which is called I Accept Gifts from a Stranger. We have not met the stranger. We have not received the gifts, but we will see them very soon. And where we last left our heroes, Clarice had been given the quest, and Percy was grumpy about it in his cabin. He couldn't go to sleep, and he's leaving his cabin now, breaking curfew. And we resume now with Percy leaving the cabin against the rules so that he can go to the ocean, where his thoughts will be clearer. Earlier, he had been describing in the cabin he could hear the sounds of the ocean, and he has decided to sneak out to try to clear his thoughts. You gotta do what you gotta do for your brain sometimes, and I support Percy doing this.
Oh, yeah.
So he gets to the beach, he spreads out a blanket, and he drinks a smuggled-in Coke because he just can't deal with the magical, not real stuff Coke. We have Coke at home. No, we don't.
It just hits different.
It does. He says, it's the narrator quote, "For some reason, sugar and caffeine always calm down my hyperactive brain." And I Googled if this was a thing, and according to Healthline, it is. They say multiple studies have suggested that caffeine consumption may help reduce symptoms of ADHD. This is most likely due to caffeine's effects on the dopaminergic system, as well as other potential interactions with neurotransmitters. And this makes sense because I believe when I was talking about medication with Amanda Marin on the ADHD dyslexia episode, she had described that this is something that is in some ADHD medications, which it does at first, I guess, to the unaware mind like mine, it feels a bit counterintuitive to think, wait a second, hyperactive add sugar and caffeine, but hey.
Oh, well, you know,
Dr. Stephen, what's up?
Not a doctor yet.
True. Doctor in training, Stephen Parra.
Oh, I forgot to mention at the top, you know, anything I talk about, this is purely my opinion. It's not medical advice, nor is it an opinion of any medical institution that exists.
Right.
Just so you know.
Right. And for me, if I say anything that you disagree with or you want to argue about, you can reach me at Brandon Grugel on Twitter. Now that those are out of the way.
Yes, of course. You might remember back from the episode you talked about many of the medications that we can prescribe to any ADHD patient. Oftentimes we have what's called stimulants, and what those will do is they'll stimulate your nervous system, and oftentimes it just kind of helps them process the day, go through their life a little better. And so caffeine is also a stimulant. And so that's why it kind of makes some intuitive sense to me, because it's like, oh yeah, it's kind of a similar process going on, but a little easier for people to self-regulate and stuff like that. So when I read that, it made sense to me in some measure, I guess.
Yeah. I appreciate having you as a doctor friend because you can tell me very complex, intricate things like this. And then also earlier today, you told me what the phenomenon was when all of a sudden you have to poop at once.
True.
And it sneaks up on you.
Yes,
so you get to learn a lot. So Percy's at the beach, drinking his Coke, feeling better. And then he wishes that Poseidon was there. He looks at the constellations in the sky. And then a guy in nylon running shorts and a New York City Marathon shirt says, "Beautiful, aren't they?" And immediately I wrote in my notes, is this Hermes? And we will see who this is. I mean, marathon shirt, come on, it has to be. I'm also imagining they did not say the length of the shorts, but given his whole running vibe, I'm imagining 4-inch inseam at most shorts. Which is quite bold. I have a couple pair of 5-inch inseam shorts, which is the true inseam for folks out there. I highly would recommend. And I have some athletic shorts that are a little bit shorter, but yeah, I would see him being one of those very daring runner shorts, can't have any chafing going on guys.
He's got to go fast.
You got to go fast, and you can't be slowed down by fabric. The description of this stranger is, quote, "He was slim and fit with salt and pepper hair and a sly smile. He looked kind of familiar, but I couldn't figure out why. It's because it's Hermes, Percy. That's why. He looks like all of your friends in Cabin Hermes." Percy at first thinks that this could be a lost mortal who got through the now faulty defenses and just wandered onto the beach. And reasonable thought. This man asks to join Percy, says he hasn't sat down in ages, which I'm sure is some reference that I wouldn't get because I don't know a lot of Greek mythology stuff. Percy agrees, and narrator Percy then warns the reader, hey, I know this is usually a bad idea, basically giving a condensed stranger danger talk to the reader, but uses justifications of, he seemed really nice, he didn't seem like he was going to harm me, the vibes were okay, but I do appreciate Uncle Rick understanding this is a children's book. Let me just make sure I'm not promoting talking to strangers on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And also, speaking of Uncle Rick, we had referenced this in the previous episode, and I did more research as to how to pronounce his name. And I do think that it's Riordan, because I found a website where Rick said his own name, and not only said his own name, but gave an explanation behind it. So I am still confused about this whole thing. The only way I will rest is when I have him on the pod and we talk about it. But here's something that I heard.
Hi, my name is Rick Riordan. Long I, like in rye bread.
Long I, like in rye bread. It's not Riordan.
Riordan.
Right?
Yeah.
The amount of times I've now flip-flopped on how to pronounce his name. Too many.
Yes, I think you're right.
Riordan. So after warning the reader about stranger danger, this stranger's cell phone goes off, and it has green snakes surrounding it. 1,000% Hermes. This is some sort of caduceus-related joke, I figured, and it is.
Did someone say caduceus?
Someone did. You'll talk about it when we get the legitimate caduceus.
Okay, let's do that.
If I get another email about the caduceus, just a general rule of thumb for anyone listening to the show ever, if you are listening to an episode of the New Olympian and it is past 6 hours of when the episode has released, so if it is past 6 a.m. Eastern time and you hear something that I messed up, do not message me. I have been corrected about it. I promise. And I know your heart is in the right place when you start a message with, I know someone's already probably told you this, but people correct me so quickly. The absolute maximum is if it's a day after I post. If it's not the Monday it comes out, do not email me. Someone has corrected me. But anyway, he picks up his cell phone and he says, yeah, listen, I know, but I don't care if he is chained to a rock with vultures pecking at his liver. If he doesn't have a tracking number, we can't locate his packet. A gift to humankind? Great. You know how many of those we do? Okay, never mind. Listen, just refer him to Eris in customer service. I gotta go. And I need to ask Dr. Boy about all of this, unless you know the story they're referring to.
No, I know all of this, but I'm just like, I don't know if you want to wait.
Yeah. Give it to me.
It's Prometheus, the story of Prometheus. He's the Titan. He's a Titan about, okay, I'll calm down. Okay. No. Okay, he's probably one of the only good Titans that we think about. So Prometheus, his whole myth thing is just that he brought fire down to mankind. And mankind was then able to harness fire, and that is what sparked civilization to grow for mankind.
Cool.
So before then, they were just kind of essentially creatures existing, but they weren't, progressing. They weren't becoming sentient, essentially.
Sure. Not a community.
Yeah, exactly. And so he gave them the gift of fire, but then as punishment, the gods then enslaved him on this rock, and then he gets like his innards eaten by a buzzard and stuff, but because he's immortal, it just regrows and then it happens again, and it's not a fun time. And then that goddess is like the goddess of discord and strife. So obviously she's going to handle all customer service complaints.
The complaint department.
Rick is having so much fun with this piece.
In this entire second half of chapter 7 is just Uncle Rick having a good time. That is the theme of this entire segment, and I love it, and I'm glad you're here for this because you were the perfect guest to discuss it.
I just love it. This is the best.
So Percy points out to this person that he's got snakes on his phone, and at this point this stranger says, what? Oh, they don't bite. Say hello, George and Martha. And then a raspy male voice inside of Percy's head goes, hello, George and Martha. And then a female voice says, don't be sarcastic. And then George replies, why not? I do all the real work. So very clear that this is Hermes here. So eventually the cell phone turns into, very clearly, the caduceus staff. Now, what's the caduceus? What was the other thing? What's the deal? I obviously know the answer because I got 8,000 emails, but just for posterity of the podcast that people don't have access to my inbox. What's
yeah,
the
for
deal?
Sure. We can do this. And it's like, as a tidbit to everybody, I had this story in my back pocket for even my first episodes with Mike, because he had gone on the record of the podcast calling Hermes the god of medicine, which is a Rick goof. It's not your fault.
Okay,
you were reading from the book.
Whew.
And so I was ready to bring it up back then, but we had way too much to talk about last time.
True.
We're going to talk about it now.
Yes.
So, first off, the caduceus, that's the symbol of Hermes.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing now with that is that it is two snakes intertwined on a singular rod in the center. Hermes' purpose, he's a messenger god. He's always going back, relaying messages and things like that. And when we think back to like ancient Greek times and even more modern conceptions, messengers were sort of protected people. They represented sort of a peaceful transfer of information, because like even if you wanted to surrender or whatever, you didn't harm the messengers, because how would you know if your armies are actually going to attack each other or not,
Yeah.
things like that. So the way the caduceus came about is like there's a few different stories about it. One of them actually comes up here, in which Hermes gives Apollo a lyre. Apollo gave him the caduceus in exchange, essentially.
Cool.
It's not completely fleshed out in this book, but that's one. But the one that I like, and it's a little more makes a little more sense, is that Hermes once came upon a couple of snakes that were really mad at each other and battling, and then he stuck a stick in between them, and they both intertwined up the stick and resolved the issues, and the caduceus was formed.
Okay.
And I kind of like that, because it really seems like a George and Martha
Totally,
relationship here. But so that is not the symbol of medicine.
Right.
The symbol of medicine is called the rod of Asclepius, who's a completely different person.
Mm-hmm.
Asclepius is actually the son of Apollo, who is the much more traditional god associated with medicine. What you'll find in Greek mythology is, if you're wondering what god is what, unless you know the main one, it's probably Apollo. He's just kind of a catch-all for a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those happens to be medicine. And so Asclepius' whole deal is that Apollo got his mother pregnant, and she was a mortal woman. Through various means, either through infidelity or whatever, she ends up about to die. And Apollo ends up performing the first cesarean section to retrieve his son Asclepius from her womb. And then Asclepius gets raised by Chiron to learn medicine. It's pretty cool.
And then he takes over Macbeth's castle.
Yes.
Right? Okay,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But his whole shtick is that he got really good at healing. And he got so good at healing that he even surpassed Chiron and his dad Apollo in healing. And he got so good at that, if you bring back people from the brink of death, and in some myths, resurrected people. And Hades didn't like that because Asclepius was stealing his subjects.
Right.
So he goes and complains to his brother Zeus, being like, hey, this ain't cool, bro. And Zeus is like, you know what? You're right. So he takes a lightning bolt and just smacks Asclepius down.
Oh my gosh. Classic Zeus.
I know. And so before his death, in the midst of his travels, Asclepius is said to have helped a snake. In exchange, the snake slithered up his staff and whispered into his ears secret truths that allowed him to do medicine. There's also another version of the myth where he accidentally killed a snake with his staff and then watched another snake heal that snake with an herb. That one's just kind of weird. But in the end, the whole important thing is that Asclepius' symbol was a stick with one snake intertwined. So there's a common misconception between the two of them, because it is a stick and there's some snakes involved, but which is which?
Right.
The actual answer is, how did the caduceus end up becoming this confused thing? And it's largely an American phenomenon, if not exclusively. I don't want to...
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Given our track record of everything.
I know. The big thing was just that once we started having sort of international conflict, we started emblazoning the caduceus on a lot of military outfits for the medical corps within the military. And that wasn't actually to designate that they were medical people. It was to designate they were non-combatants, similarly to a messenger. But as time went on, those things just got more and more intertwined. And then it started becoming more dictated, like, okay, we were going to use the caduceus as our medical corps symbol for a lot of different branches of the military. And it got much more intertwined. Even more so once the printing press had come out at some point.
Gutenberg, baby.
Yeah, Gutenberg, baby. And a lot of them actually use the caduceus as well, invoking Hermes as the messenger thing. And so a lot of medical journals and textbooks of the time were using the caduceus just as a printer's label, not
That's
as
so wild that it would just be these two separate things, like around the same messenger concept. Yeah.
Exactly. And so and those kind of converge, and that's how this weird misconception has happened. So a lot of people think the caduceus is the symbol of medicine, but it's not. It's the rod of Asclepius. And he's pretty cool.
Yeah. And there you go. Nerd Corner with Stephen Parra, med student in training.
Yes.
Doctor in training. Med student currently. Yeah. So anyway, Percy Jackson. So the jogger gets back to talking about relaxing and looking up at the stars, and asks Percy if he has a favorite constellation? And Percy says Hercules, because his luck was worse than mine, and it makes me feel better, which is an incredible answer that Hermes very much enjoys. Then the jogger says, so what now? And Percy realizes immediately, 100%, he's referring to the fleece. I don't know who this guy is yet, which, come on, Percy, get on board. But he knows that this guy's talking to him about the quest. Narrator Percy says, before I could answer, Martha the snake's muffled voice came from his pocket. I have Demeter on line 2. Not now. Tell her to leave a message. And at this point, the voice has changed where I originally imagined George kind of being Patrick Starr's voice. Now, at this point, I was imagining Martha being Estelle, George Costanza's mother in Seinfeld, who also does the voice of Mrs. Potato Head. Just the very high-pitched, angry, like, she's not gonna like that. The last time you put her off, all the flowers in the floral delivery division wilted. Just imagining this.
It's like, tell her I have a meeting, okay?
Exactly, yeah. Hermes says, just tell her I'm in a meeting. Sorry again, Percy, you were saying? It's just, everything with Hermes and the snakes is so funny. It is so good. I just had an ear-to-ear smile on the entire time I was reading this part of the chapter. It's so fantastic. Percy asks, who are you? And the jogger says, you don't know? You haven't guessed already? Come
seriously?
On, it's quite obvious, Percy. Have you not read the book? Martha begs to let them into their original form because it's been ages. George says she just wants to show off. Hermes says, original form, please. And it is the caduceus. And now we know what it is.
Da, 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 da.
And when Percy realizes this, he says, oh, you're Luke's father, Hermes. Petty...
Darth Vader.
But we stan a petty king, Percy, because my goodness, love that. And Hermes even picks up on this. He goes, oh, people usually don't call me that. Usually they call me one of my other godly titles, but Luke's father is not common. George and Martha bicker some more, and then Hermes asks Percy if he's going to do the quest. Percy says, well, I'm not allowed. And Hermes asks, is that really going to stop you?
He's like, come on, bro.
Come on. Hermes then smiles and he says, I knew a boy once. Oh, younger than you by far. A mere baby, really. And then George butts in. And then at this point, because George and Martha start bickering, George, to me, has turned into George Costanza's father, Frank Costanza, Jerry Stiller, where the two of them are just now George Costanza's parents, the snake, in my brain, where he's just going, oh, here we go again. Always talking about himself.
Does this make Hermes George Costanza?
Maybe. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, especially because how frantic Hermes gets. Though I was imagining, and maybe it's just because of the runner-jogger thing, I was imagining John McEnroe style hair for Hermes, just very big, curly, flowing in the way with all of this salt and pepper grayness throughout. But that's what I had in my brain.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. The way he's described, he definitely seems like a John McEnroe, Derek Shepherd sort of person.
Yeah,
you know?
with a big headband that's making it floof up even more.
Oh, yeah, I could see that too. Yeah.
Just a very old school vibe to him.
Chill.
Richard Simmons energy.
Oh.
You know, that kind of thing. Basically a Richard Simmons workout thing, but it's a New York City shirt. But yeah, I guess that could make Hermes George Costanza in personality, not necessarily in...
He seems way too chill to be George Costanza.
I mean, he wasn't very chill when he was dealing with the phone call. I guess he's a very chill person normally, but his job really stresses him out, which...
That's fair.
Which I think is incredibly valid. And it's something that happens to me. I find myself to be a pretty chill person, but when I'm trying to go over a little piece of audio that I just can't get quite right, and I'm listening to the same thing 10, 15, 20 times trying to remove a click or whatever it is, I do get very stressed out. And then I get mad. Thankfully, it's more often me because I'm a very mouth sound clicky boy. It's usually me. But then I get mad at past myself for whatever sentence I'm saying. And it doesn't matter what sentence I'm saying. I could be saying the potato was soft. And then because I've heard me say the potato was soft and I listen, no, I didn't fix the problem. The potato was soft, I fixed the problem. It's the 20th time. It's like, I get it. The potato's soft. Shut up and stop making your mouth noise. Sometimes I get stressed out by my job, but then it always does make me feel silly whenever I'm stressed about my job, which is professional talker. But, you know, sometimes it can be a bit much. But yes, maybe not necessarily George Costanza, because George Costanza is all... This is not a Seinfeld podcast, though it is slowly becoming one.
Bam, 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 bam. I can't.
And before we continue, this is a great time since we're on a wild tangent. Let's take a little break here.
See you later.
Yeah, the sea of sponsors of ahoy, anchors away. Hello and welcome to a special travel edition of the Sea of Sponsors. I'm coming to you from Jodhpur, India, where it is 108 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm outside so that there is not room echo, but you might hear some birds chirping and stuff. And if the sound quality sounds like I'm talking into my phone, it's because I am. I didn't bring all of my audio equipment to this trip. I've been in India for a couple days and I'll be here for a couple weeks. So here we are, the Sea of Sponsors. Welcome aboard. How's it going, everybody? First, shout out to all the folks who have supported the podcast on Patreon. If you go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, you can support the show and get access to bonus episodes, monthly live streams, director's commentary, my notes, all sorts of fun stuff. And we've been sending out merchandise as well. There's patron exclusive stickers and pins, and it's been fun to start mailing those out. And I will be sending out a whole bunch when I get back to the States later in the month. But I want to thank the newest members of our team. So shout out to our newest Mega God tier patron, a happy birthday wish to Anna Catherine. Shout out to our newest Super God tier patron, Bookish Nerd Girl. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, Alice the Latina Elf, Alice Bailey, Anna Meyer, and Jason Derulo Grace. And shout out to our newest Demigod tier patrons, Prodigy Jerry, Helia, Mona, and Alyssa Nevit. Thank you all so much. May Demeter, I guess she's the god of nature, so that counts as weather. May she help you survive in heat, say, when it gets to 108 degrees Fahrenheit and you're outside. Also, want to thank Multitude for having us as a part of the collective. If you're all caught up on TNO and you need some new podcasts to listen to, you should listen to Multitude podcasts. And one of the ones you should listen to is Spirits, which is a history and comedy podcast that is focused on everything folklore, mythology, and the occult, told through the lens of feminism, queerness, and modern adulthood. If you enjoy the mythology elements of TNO, you're going to like the stuff that Spirits talks about. They've done episodes about different Greek gods. Dr. Moya, who's been on TNO a lot, has been on Spirits a lot. So lots of fun stuff that if you like what we've got going on, you'll like what they've got going on. And they have over 250 episodes that have been released over the past 5 years. So if you're looking for a podcast to marathon through, this is the podcast for you. You can listen to it at spiritspodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts by searching for Spirits. And finally, before we wrap up here, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors who make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of these ads will be read by me, others of them won't. The ones that are not read by me are inserted locally, so if you live in Jodhpur, don't be surprised if you hear a Jodhpur-specific ad. And once these ads are complete, we'll get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. Okay, we're back, yay! And we're gonna talk about Percy Jackson this time, we promise.
We got very chaotic there.
But to be back to Percy Jackson and specifically to this chapter, because Hermes is about to launch into a story about himself, it is funny that twice in this chapter we have people talking about themselves, but doing it in this way that doesn't seem like they're about to do it. And I try to be very conscious of it because I'm someone that hosts a podcast and I always have different guests and I host 5 podcasts and I've recorded them for years. And inherently I tell a lot of stories about myself and sometimes I repeat them. I try to be very conscious about not just me like talking about myself all the time. I would definitely not do a thing where I'm like, I knew someone once, years prior, a silly lanky boy. I would never give such a preamble to a story I'm about to tell about myself.
It would be delightful to read a children's book.
I knew a man once who wanted to look up the latitude and longitude coordinates from a book, but he wrote the wrong ones. And then he looked up the coordinates for Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I knew a man once who read the word underfed, but he thought it said underfed. And then on his podcast, which was listened to by literally millions of people each month, he wondered, what does this word underfed mean? And then he Googled it and said, oh, this must be some sort of British English word that means malnourished or not getting enough food. You know, like the word underfed means.
Man, I should check this podcast out.
That boy was me. Anyway, I would never give such a preamble, but here we go. It's preamble corner here in chapter 7 of The Sea of Monsters. But before Hermes can continue the story, George says, here we go again, always talking about himself. And then Martha says, quiet! Do you want to get set on vibrate? Which I love. Their dynamic is so funny. And the constant referring to them being a cell phone is very good. And I'm glad that you clarified this with the messenger business, because while I was reading this, I didn't really understand. I know that Hermes is the messenger guy, so I guessed that was the connection, but to go from staff to cell phone felt a little weird, but now because so much messaging, and especially with the snakes using that too, it makes more sense. It's such a fun, creative thing for Rick to throw in there. And I wonder if there's a difference between this cell phone in that it doesn't attract monsters, like the story was in the first book where, oh, no, you can't use cell phones because it'll attract monsters, because we're writing a book and it would be very boring if you could just use cell phones.
True. Also, I think, he's a god.
Right, yes. And I also like that he is able to set the snakes on vibrate, because not only does it prevent them from speaking, but it also feels like being on vibrate would not be very pleasant.
No.
I don't even like sometimes when my phone is in my pocket and I get a lot of calls or messages or whatever and it's buzzing a lot, I cannot imagine my entire being vibrating when I try to speak, which is what I guess they would do here. It'd be like wearing a shock collar, like a dog when you bark too loudly. But anyway, Hermes just completely ignores them and he says, one night when this boy's mother, he hasn't dropped the pretense, when this boy's mother wasn't watching, he snuck out. He said sneaked out, but I rewrote it to be snuck out. Is sneaked out the thing? I feel like snuck out. No? It's not like hung versus hanged where there's different versions, meaning if you're hanging a shirt or something else, but sneaked out?
I don't know. Rick is the English teacher here, but snuck sounds right to me.
Right.
But language works. We understand what he meant.
Yeah, linguists out there, direct your tweets to @BrandonGoogle on Twitter. Let us know if it's snuck or sneaked. It is fun because I could check Brandon's mentions. I could just search for tweets directed at Brandon. Anyway, that's definitely my Twitter and not someone else's.
Yeah.
So he snuck/sneaked out of their cave and stole some cattle that belonged to Apollo. To make up for this theft, the boy gave Apollo an instrument he'd invented, a lyre, with a Y and an R-E at the end.
Yes.
Apollo was so enchanted with the music that he forgot all about being angry. And that's really nice. To be given a gift that makes up for a transgression is fantastic and something I could support for sure.
Yeah.
Percy asks what the moral of this story was. And I was glad he did because I read this and I thought, okay.
Yeah.
Cool story, bro. Basically.
Exactly.
It's one of the stories.
Let me tell you about myself.
Right. Or the thing that I've heard some other friends do where you tell a story and it doesn't get any sort of big reaction and then you go, and then I found $5.
Yeah.
So it makes it cool. Hermes is confused, saying that it's the truth. It's not a fable. Does the truth need a moral? And then he decides, how about this? Stealing is not always bad. And then Percy says, I don't think my mom would like that moral. And
she doesn't like Robin Hood?
And then George butts in, rats are delicious. And then Martha goes, what does that have to do with this story? Nothing, but I'm hungry.
And it's true.
This is truly when they took their Costanza parents' form. And then Hermes goes, I've got it. Young people don't always do what they're told, but if they can pull it off and do something wonderful, sometimes they escape punishment. How's that? And that is quite literal, but it works.
Yeah.
It's an accurate description of the story that you have just told us. Thank you, Hermes. Percy then tries to relate to what he's been told, and he says, you're saying I should go anyway, even without permission. And then Hermes' eyes twinkle. Of course, he's the mischievous one.
Oh, yeah.
And then he says, Martha, may I have the first package, hinting that there's going to be more than one. And as did the chapter title, because it's gifts, plural, says, may I have the first package, please? And these are the aforementioned gifts from the aforementioned stranger.
Martha, show him what he's won.
And she truly does. Her mouth grows, her neck becomes the size of Percy's forearm, and she burps out a steel canister. And at first I thought, there's going to be a gift inside of the canister. But no, the gift is the canister, because it is a Hercules-themed thermos from a Hercules Busts Heads TV show. And when Percy asks about this, Hermes sighs and says that it was a great show before all of Hephaestus TV became reality TV. And this is incredibly 2006 of Rick, because this is right after Survivor became the most important television program, at least in America.
Yeah.
And then there was a slew of everything was a reality show. The Bachelor came out. Joe Millionaire came out. The Apprentice came out.
Yes.
So many reality shows came out. And it was a very common complaint. And then you even had the things of the Osbournes had a thing. The writers' strike.
The writers' strike, it made it even worse because they're like, well, you know what? We got reality TV.
Yes. So this is an incredibly 2006 gripe, which was, everything's reality TV. Definitely hit the nail on the head. Love this little time capsule. But yeah, it's a Hercules-themed thermos. I don't know if you were ever a thermos person, but I used to bring thermoses in packed lunches, and they would always have milk in them, not soup. And it wasn't until high school that people told me that that was weird. And I still to this day don't know if that was weird or if it was like a Northeast thing or if it is normal and my high school friends are being weird. But I always just had milk in a thermos, not soup.
I mean, the whole point of it is it's an insulator. You can keep things cold or warm. So you do you, bro.
I wanted milk at lunch, and I don't have a fridge to put my lunchbox in during the day. I didn't go to a bougie school. I would just put it in my locker all day. So yeah, the milk was able to be kept fresh. Yeah. So I could drink milk that wasn't cheese at lunchtime or yogurt or butter. Or
good for everyone all around.
Percy then goes, oh, it's a compass, because one side stays hot and the other side is cold, and the cold side is always the one facing north. And I thought that was very cool, where I'd written in my notes, oh, it's a compass in all caps. And then very shortly after, oh, lol, it's not a compass. Because Hermes says, quote, very clever. I never thought of that. But its intended use is a bit more dramatic. This is such a great way for him to very politely go, well, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
So he says, its intended use is a bit more dramatic. Uncap it, and you will release the winds from the four corners of the earth to speed you on your way. Not now. And please, when the time comes, only unscrew the lid a tiny bit. The winds are a bit like me, always restless. Should all four escape at once? But I'm sure you'll be careful. And my prediction here, let me just get it right here in stone. I would assume maybe it's when he's fighting the big Cyclops, but I'm assuming that at some point Percy will intentionally uncap it to release the full force of everything to really blow someone away. That is my guess, because it just felt like incredibly foreshadowing.
Yeah, I mean, it is a middle grade book, right? I don't know what I can say.
Nothing.
Yay!
Hermes then asks George for the second gift, and George goes, she's touching me, and as Martha is slithering around the pole, and Hermes goes, she's always touching you. You're intertwined. And if you don't stop that, you'll get knotted again, which is great. I know there are PJO short stories that I will be reading at some point after I finish the books. I would love a short story about the time that George and Martha got accidentally tied in a knot, because I loved this section of this chapter. I would read 100 consecutive pages of George and Martha bickering. It's so good. It's very funny. Every interchange was perfect.
For sure. Just Hermes going around doing about his business.
Yes.
Give me a rat.
Yeah, just a day in the life of Hermes while George and Martha complain the whole time. Yes.
Yes.
Please, give it to me.
Uncle Rick, come on the pod.
Come on the pod and let's just talk about...
Read it out. Read this excerpt to us.
Yeah. Right, a little fanfic. Come on, fanfic with Uncle Rick. Yeah. At Hermes' warning, they stop wrestling with each other. So the next gift is Greek-themed vitamins, and they have different shapes. And not only do they have different shapes, but they have different shapes that are hard to tell what they are, which is very emblematic of shapes, whether it's cereal marshmallows or vitamins. It's always hard to look at them and go, is that Fred or is that Barney? It's always a tough time sometimes to know what the shapes are. Sometimes those companies get very loose with what the shape means. So this was such a really funny nugget for Uncle Rick to throw in there. But Hermes warns that they are very potent, so you should only take them when you need them. And Percy asks, when am I going to know that I need them? And Hermes says, you'll know when you need them.
Yeah.
So Percy says thank you for the gifts, but then he asks Hermes, why are you helping? And then Hermes says, quote, perhaps I hope that you can save many people on this quest, Percy, not just your friend Grover. And Percy interprets this as a Luke-based thing. He says, you don't mean Luke? And that was not my initial thought. When I read this, I thought Hermes was referring to Camp Half-Blood, because clearly Camp Half-Blood is not doing well with the damaged tree. So that was my thought. Did you interpret that as a Luke thing right away? I didn't really see how this quest is going to save Luke. How does getting the Golden Fleece save Luke unless Hermes is hoping that he'll run into Luke along the way. I was very confused about Percy jumping to this conclusion, and then Hermes basically confirming the conclusion jump.
I think it's just because Luke's his kid, man.
Okay, I guess I don't see personally, and maybe we'll see in the book and you can't say anything because of spoilers, but personally, I just don't see how the quest to save Grover and return the fleece in hopes of saving Camp Half-Blood, I don't really see what that has to do with Luke, unless we learn that the tree has been poisoned intentionally by Kronos, and Hermes knows that that's in play, and he knows that Luke is somehow in this mix. But I guess right now for me, it feels like Luke is not necessarily directly correlated to the plot that we've got going on. I would not be surprised if it's all intertwined and something is in the mix, but I guess at least with what we know so far, my brain did not jump initially to, oh, Hermes wants him to save Luke.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think as you read more, maybe this will get more clear or it'll get more muddy.
Okay.
Yes and no, as Kelly might say.
Another straight answer. Thanks, Steven.
What do you want me to do here?
This is what I want you to do.
That's what I'm doing. Last time I pretended I never read the book series before, and, I gotta try new things, But yeah, no, I think that's totally legitimate. It's the last time we saw Luke, he just gave Percy a nice scorpion sting on his hand, and that's all we've seen of him. So who knows? But I think, as you've pointed out, with information is withheld from Percy quite often. Yeah. And so maybe there's things that Hermes is aware of that Percy isn't. And right. I'm sure as you read more, that will or will not come to pass, so we'll see.
Yeah, and it definitely makes sense, Hermes being a god, and not only being a god where he might know more stuff, but specifically being the messenger god. I feel like he would also be the god of gossip and scuttlebutt and hearing things through the grapevine. He would know if something's going on and if Luke is in the mix. So maybe Luke is in the mix. Maybe that could be the intrigue that we learn here, is that there could be a way that Luke factors into this book, and maybe there will be a dramatic showdown between Percy and Luke. So we'll have to see. So once Percy thinks that this is what Hermes is getting at, Percy goes, look, Lord Hermes, I mean, thanks and everything, but you might as well take back your gifts. Luke can't be saved. Even if I could find him, he told me he wanted to tear down Olympus stone by stone. He betrayed everybody he knew. He hates you especially. And Hermes says, my dear young cousin, if there's one thing I've learned over the eons, it's that you can't give up on your family, no matter how tempting they make it. It doesn't matter if they hate you or embarrass you or simply don't appreciate your genius for inventing the internet. And before we can get into the inventing the internet, which is very interesting and would make Al Gore very upset, his family line is really true. And I think it's something that a lot of us can relate to with whatever sort of family member you have for whatever sort of issue. This is definitely a true thing. It's a harsh truth of your family's always going to be there. You're always going to be running into them at different things. You can't just give up on your family. I mean, you can, but you got to always try to make it work. And reading this, I thought it was a pretty powerful message from Hermes for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Even for me, it's like I have being Mexican, I come from a very, very big family,
Sure.
and it's like, there's a lot of us. You don't always see each other all the time, and everyone makes different decisions in life that you may or may not disagree with. But, at the end of the day, it's your job to be there for each other and support. So I totally get it, and I can definitely relate to it. It's like, there's times where there is conflict in family, but, it's important to do your best to just try to make sure everyone's okay and healthy and moving forward in life.
Yeah. And try to not hold any sort of grudge. Try to bury things when you can and move on because, they're family. It's what you got to do.
It's like if your family is like actively trying to harm you and hurt you, it's like
incredibly
we're
different.
not trying to just normalize like, oh, you got to forgive everyone for everything. That's the big caveat here. But I do think the overall message here is important.
Yes. And it's also just like if there are things that become issues, any sort of like long-standing disagreement, like that's just the dedication to continue to try to work it. You're not going to solve it at one Thanksgiving dinner, but you're not just going to give up on trying to love your Uncle Fabio or whoever is out there, Oh, my Uncle Fabio is going to be really upset hearing that I just put him on blast. Anyway, the final line, he says, or simply don't appreciate your genius for inventing the internet. And Percy goes, you invented the internet? And then Martha goes, it was my idea. And George says, rats are delicious. I love his one-track mind.
I know.
George. So good. Easily one of my favorite characters.
Oh, yeah.
Hermes then corrects Martha, saying, it was my idea. And then he says, I mean, the internet, not the rats. But that's not the point, Percy. Do you understand what I'm saying about family? And Percy basically says, no, not really. Which I totally get, especially that Percy's got one of the strangest family situations possible. Didn't think his dad was alive. uh-oh, my dad's Poseidon. My stepdad is terrible. Now my stepdad has been murdered by my mom. It's a very strange situation that Percy has going on, and I cannot fault him for not really understanding this. Hermes says that Percy will one day get this, but he, Hermes, has to get going. Martha informs Hermes that in this span of time where I guess he put his notifications on mute, he received 60 calls, and George says that he has 1,038 emails, which, as myself, a garbage person that has over 4,000 emails in one of my inboxes, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I know. So I think this is one of those carryovers from 2006 as well, because I could imagine it's like, I have a 1,000 email inbox. Might have been a little more daunting.
Yeah, for me, I just work to keep my inbox of my email address, not my work one, but my one that's just got a whole bunch of stuff and different promotions or whatever things that come through. I just try to keep that one under 4,000. That's when it gets out of hand.
Oh, yeah, that's the reasonable part. Also,
the real problem is when Rice, the college we went to, when that, it was so frustrating that I converted our OwlNet emails, which were garbage, into Gmail our junior year. And then our senior year, they switched to where you could log into Gmail with your Rice email. And I just brought over all of the emails, and it had them all marked as unread, but I couldn't just trash all of them because I'm the type of person that leaves things unread when it's important or things I need to refer back to.
Yeah.
So I had probably maybe 50 or so from my OwlNet thing marked as unread, and then I carried it all over, and I was like, oh, crap.
I know.
So it was just, that inbox has never really had its crap together.
Yeah. It's like, are you familiar with the idea of archiving emails?
Yes, I archive stuff for sure.
Okay, yeah.
But it's just, I don't know. I get stuff in, and then I just get so much, and there's lots of like Patreon emails and then bank emails.
Yeah.
And then every now and then I basically just kind of search, and I try to unsubscribe from so many things.
I know, and they just find a way to worm their way back in.
And one of those websites, like, there's a couple. One, when your email body is so big that you have to click the thing that says show full email to then click the link to go to unsubscribe. Hate that. And then I also hate the one where you get the thing and you do the unsubscribe, and then it says, we'll unsubscribe you from this type of message because... Who's the people that made the cooking thing and then they were actually racist?
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit. I hate them so much. I felt so vindicated when they were put on blast for being a terrible company because the amount of emails that I got from Bon Appetit and the number of times I unsubscribed from them, but they would do that same thing where it says, oh, we'll unsubscribe you from cool breakfast ideas. It's like, oh, we'll unsubscribe you from cookbook updates. Like, and it was just, I unsubscribed maybe 8 times and I still got emails. It was the most infuriating thing. I hate that so much. So maybe one day I'll get my inbox in order, but not today.
I think bottom line, we have to blame Hermes, both for inventing the internet and probably also inventing chain newsletters.
Yep. Yes. Hermes, how dare you come on the pod so I can fight you. Anyway, well, he's got 1,038 emails. Not that bad. Hermes then tells Percy that he's got a shorter deadline than he realizes and that his friends are coming right now. And I didn't know if this meant that Hermes talked to his friends or if Hermes could just sense it. Like, does he have the ability to just know, or did he just hear them or see them? I was very confused about how Hermes, he's also a god, so maybe he just knows.
You know, we were joking, like Superman powers rules for the gods,
Right.
Maybe he heard them, maybe he saw them, maybe.
It's one of those things where so many gods are the gods of so many different things that you could find one thing that ties to, because he's the god of running and marathons, he heard footsteps, so he knew that Tyson and Annabeth were approaching, and that's how he knew.
Or maybe he functions like SpongeBob in that one episode. It's like, you want me to see me run to the cabin and back? Want to see me do it again?
Exactly. So Hermes then says, I hope I packed well for you. I do have some experience with travel. And then he snaps his fingers, does his step, and 3 yellow duffel bags appear at Percy's feet. And then Hermes says, quote, waterproof, of course. If you ask nicely, your father should be able to help you reach the ship. And before Percy can even ask, what is in this luggage? How have you packed so many things? I don't own that many things. I didn't bring anything to camp this time. Percy goes, ship? And a cruise ship comes through the Long Island Sound. And Percy's very confused, saying, I've not even agreed to go yet. And Hermes says, well, you better decide in the next 5 minutes, because after then, the harpies are going to eat you. So I'm very intrigued, first off, by this luggage, yellow luggage. That's great. That'll really stand out at the checked baggage spinning terminal roller coaster ride that we all want to go on. That's pretty nice. I do wonder what was packed. It seems more helpful than a backpack that's actually here to trick you. If the reveal ends up being that Hermes is bad and the luggage is a trick, I will feel very upset. I hope this is genuinely cool luggage, and I hope that Percy gets to keep the luggage because it sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah.
It sounds like some good stuff.
Absolutely.
And I can appreciate good packing. I used to be not a very good packer. I used to just pack last minute, throw a bunch of stuff in. Now that I've had to pack a lot, and it first started with me having to bring microphone equipment wherever I went, I had to be very good about packing. Now, and it's something that I did last night because recording this on March 2nd, I'm about to do some live shows for Potterless, and I need to pack my suitcase where I have the clothes I need, but then also merch that I'm going to sell at the live shows.
Oh, yeah.
So I have to be really good about packing. And then I also have to pack things like the money guns that I shoot off when I enter stage. And
spoilers.
So I have to be very, very particular about packing and stuff. So I used to not be a very good packer. I'd do it all last minute. Now I pack sometimes weeks in advance so that I make sure, because I will also run into the situation sometimes. I start to pack and then it's the day before the trip and I go, oh no, that whatever I want to wear is dirty and I'm not going to do laundry today. So I try to pack it ahead of time so that Mike from the past / the future can't wear the shirt he wants to bring. It's not even an option anymore.
That one's right out.
It's just gone. Annabeth and Tyson do in fact approach. Hermes wishes Percy good luck. Martha wishes him good luck. And George tells him to bring back a rat for him, which, George, we know your character. This is true to form. Thank you, George. You've got your bit. You stick to your bit. That's a good improv practice. And the narrator Percy closes out the chapter by saying, quote, he jogged off down the beach. 20 paces away, he shimmered and vanished, leaving me alone with a thermos, a bottle of chewable vitamins, and 5 minutes to make an impossible decision. And that is the end of chapter 7, and that's the end of this episode of The Newest Olympian. What a fantastic chapter. And this is only half of a chapter. What a beefy little half chapter we had here.
Yeah. Absolutely. It really filled the time.
So much going on, so much intrigue. This is the classic quest is about to start kind of end of act moment. And I'm incredibly excited to read chapter 8 and see what the heck is going on. I'm surprised that it's a cruise ship. I was not imagining a cruise ship. I don't know if this is a misdirect or if this is actually what they'll be taking. I was imagining, since it just seems like it's going to be 3 people, it would just be, I don't know, a little sailboat of sorts. I was feeling like this would be a much more piratey book, not necessarily a Royal Caribbean book. And I'm very intrigued to see what's going on with the cruise ship, with the quest and everything. But yeah, how do you feel about this little half chapter and what lies ahead?
Oh man, I mean, I just got to hang out with George and Martha for an hour. That was awesome.
The true heroes of the Sea of Monsters, George and Martha. They're so good. I really hope they're back. There's so many characters so far that we've only met in glimpses, but I really like Beckendorf. I really enjoy George and Martha. I hope that they come back, all of them, because they're really fun, nice characters that I've been enjoying learning more about and getting to chill with.
Oh yeah, they're just the best. You know, and I think that's something that Rick does really well, is he just makes it really enjoyable for us to kind of experience characters in snippets, and maybe they don't overstay their welcome. There's just enough that you want more, you want to come back, you want to see more.
Exactly. No one is there for too long. He knows when to wipe the scene, and he just gives you that little taste, and I'm sure the beloved ones will come back for more, and other ones like the Grey Sisters, who we only had for a little bit of time, they're probably not going to come back because they weren't as much fun. They serve their purpose and they're good, but George and Martha is great. And I also like that Rick finds so many different ways to interject humor into these books in unique and interesting ways. You have Tantalus being so villainous that it's funny. You have Percy and Annabeth throwing shade and sass at each other. You have George and Martha just being these very strange comic relief characters, just like the stuffed animal prize things Key and Peele in Toy Story 4. These people who are combined and bicker with each other and stuff. Just you have so many different ways that comedy finds its way into these books in fun and unexpected ways. And just meeting the gods and the gods having such different vibes and such vibes that you would not associate with being a god. Zeus was this very fancy 3-piece suit type boy. Then you've got Poseidon, who is Fisher dad. And now you've got marathon runner, long distance runner, Hermes. It's just really fun, and it's a fun way to take part of what makes the gods, but then making them more interesting characters as opposed to just they're all wearing togas and they're all on Mount Olympus and they all just have these magical powers.
Yeah.
It's cool that they're more like people. They are more like his uncle, his cousin, his dad. And I really like it. And I am so excited. I just want to keep meeting more gods because every time you do, it's so much fun.
Yes. They're so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we have a little bit of time. So I've been told by the Discord that you need to be informed of something important about shipping. And I am probably the worst ambassador for this.
Okay.
Only because shipping is not really the way I engage with fandom for the most part.
I'm not a master at all. Lauren Shippen is true to her name. The best at it.
Yes. But so I have been told that the Percy Annabeth ship is called Persabeth. Not
Percy-beth?
No.
Persabeth.
It's Persabeth, and it's spelled Percabeth.
That makes sense.
Yes. And the pronunciation makes sense, but I know my brain, when I read it, I see Percabeth, and I know I am told that I am a morally incorrect person for saying it that way.
Morally incorrect?
Yes,
wow.
Yes,
okay, I didn't know using a hard C made you a bad person.
Oh, yes, I know, right?
Okay, Persabeth.
Persabeth. Apparently, it's like, I think there is some division about which is correct, but I think Persabeth is the pervasive pronunciation.
Yeah, I like it because it doesn't just have all of Percy's name and then adding part of Annabeth's name at the end.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense where it's a portion of Percy's name and a portion of Annabeth's name. And do the number of letters even match up? Perca is 5, and then... or I guess they would just be Perc, and then it would be Abteh. So even she gets one extra letter. So I think that works out. I like that. I thank you for correcting me. I will start saying Persabeth. I'm glad that that's what you said for the shipping and not what some people have said, which is, you're shipping Percy and Annabeth together. They're technically kind of cousins. I'm sorry. Have you ever read Greek mythology before? Like,
I know.
Everyone's related. You'd gotta just accept that and move on.
And it's also fun. It's like Rick Riordan.
Yes. Long eye, like the
Rick
bread.
Riordan. Okay. Yes. Uncle Rick actually went and wrote a blog post about it because he has actually been asked that question. Not about Percy and Annabeth necessarily in particular, but the idea of demigods dating. Mm-hmm. And he put that measure to bed pretty firmly. He's just like, chill.
Yeah. Just basically pointing to Greek mythology.
Well, he was just saying, it's like, I guess if we really want to establish rules in the universe, it's like siblings from the same godly parent.
Right.
That would be kind of weird. But beyond that, it's like,
Yeah, it makes sense.
It'd like be like meeting anyone else at a summer camp.
Yeah. And I, as someone who have 0 cousins, I have no expertise or grounds to say on this. But you, as someone with many, many cousins, I feel like you have more expertise in this field.
Yes. Many, many cousins. I don't want to say that by being Mexican, I'm saying you should date your cousins. That's not what I meant at all.
No. You're just confirming my favorite line from Spy Kids 3, which is when all of the family comes in. One of their friends, who's a white kid, goes, "Wow, your family's really big."
Yes.
Which I definitely asked you at one point, is that a line that is aged poorly? And you're like, nah, we do have really big families.
I think that is accurate. I mean, it's Robert Rodriguez. He gets it.
Oh, man. So, yes, thank you for correcting me there. And yeah, we'll see if they end up together. I don't know. I hope it happens, but if it doesn't, it's going to be okay. But I'm just glad we were able to spend the time here talking about this little half of a chapter, which was quite chunky. A lot of stuff going in, and I'm very excited to see what happens in the next chapter and the rest of this book. But Stephen, thank you so much for joining. If people want to find you doing stuff, where can they find you?
You can check me out on an episode of Mike's podcast, Meddling Adults, and then also check me on a podcast called Render Me This. I guest there from time to time, and it's just about looking at cartoons from our childhood and seeing if we'd ever want to live there. They just released a Patreon, I think, recently, so go show them some love if you like what they're doing. And other than that, I'm sure I'm going to be back here sometime soon.
Yes. Yeah. And something you certainly will be back for is, as I mentioned in other episodes in the mid-roll, that if we do hit 1,000 patrons on thenewsolympian.com/Patreon, we will be doing a very special Hades stream where, yes, Hades is a video game. In the final hour, we got that reference in the episode. We are okay for our contractual obligation to talk about it once an episode.
Yes.
We will be doing a stream, you and I, where I am trying to start a new save game of Hades and get to the first true ending of the game. We will take however long it takes, probably a couple hours, but that would be a very fun thing. So if you want to see that and finally get access, you have to be a patron to see it. See me doing this stream. Head on over to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. Get us up to 1,000, and Stephen and I will make it happen.
Yeah.
But until next time on the podcast, when we talk about Chapter 8 and potentially some more chapters, I don't know how long Chapter 8 is, but until then, I'll see you later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you are all caught up on the show and you want some more, you can get some more by going to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. You'll get access to loads of bonus episodes, bonus audio, all the old Potterless stuff, a whole bunch of fun things at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. And speaking of that Patreon, I want to give a huge shout out to our producer level patrons: Lotta Bartova, Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Emma Cooey, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Hoskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Tough Bayfong, Moo Productions, Don't Call Me Nymphadora, Olivia Y, Craig McRoberts, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Minka Dreesen, Can't-I Seaweed Brain, Matt Barger, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Boney Pony, Getting Stoned with Smelly Gabe, Heather McMillan, Casey Canales, Polly Burridge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Bridget Lowry, Josh Sayer, Percy Blue, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Shannon Ivanez Aguilar, Wise Girl, Alpacas Are Hope, Milo TZ, Roxas 1912, Rafaela, Ashton Gabrielson, Cara Marin, Colby, Marco Redhouse, Falcon, Joey James, Christopher William Boucher, Justin Lux, Caden Max, Sam Ruby, Carly Allen, Riley Kiedis, Mary Kelly, Audra, Mackenzie, Mrs. O'Leary, Marina Foose, and Erin Wood. If you want to follow the show on social media, we are at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and we're also at reddit.com/r/the Newest Olympian. If you want to help out the show in a non-monetary way, spreading it by word of mouth is awesome, and I really appreciate it. You can post about it on social media. You can leave a rating and review on whatever podcast app you're using. You can reach out to someone that you know that you think would like the show, whether it's an email, a text message, whatever, and just say, hey, there's this really cool podcast hosted by this really cool, humble guy, and I think you would enjoy it. If you do that, I would really appreciate it. But I'm just so thankful you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode where we cover Chapter 8 and a little bit of Chapter 9 of The Sea of Monsters. And our special guest is editor of TNO, Sherry Guo. But thank you again so much for listening, and until next time, I'll see you later. Hello, how's it going? It's ASMR Mike. I'm here on the balcony in our hotel in Jodhpur, India, and for this episode's ASMR Mike segment, I'm just going to let you hear the chirping birds and noises of the balcony for a minute, and I hope you enjoy them, and I am glad that you've stuck through to the very end of the episode.